Well, legally, they're not taking a position. And what that does is that leaves it open to every person sitting at the table as to what they're gonna talk about or not talk about based on their own interpretation and their own morals and their own ethics. And that's just, it's just gray area. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, there's really no, honestly, there's no legal recourse. There's really no legal recourse. You can't get rid of a board member for breaching that stuff. That would go all the way to the Supreme Court, and you'd lose. I mean, personally, the only way to avoid any of this is just to make it a habit to seal minutes. But that's, there's gonna be people that don't wanna seal minutes that don't need to be sealed.
I think maybe when you have a personnel issue or you're speaking about a child.
First of all,
no one's gonna argue that, Debbie.
I know, but
No one's gonna argue that.
it says that people may read this and say, oh, I thought non-public you couldn't speak about them. I see that really legally you can after.
I've been on the board for 3 years. We've never had a kid's name come up in a meeting.
Right.
In 3 years. We've never had a kid's
We
name,
have.
for any reason, come up in a meeting. Well, I'm just saying we haven't. I mean,
We have
personnel issues.
personnel issues,
No,
but,
that's
you know,
that's another thing.
We
But-
need to remind each other at the end of these do we need to seal those and make a decision, yes or no?
Based on the
And-
rules, there are rules.
Yeah, based
around
on the
sealing.
rules, and there are
Yeah.
rules.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but there's also rules that say, let's say negotiations. You can either have a non-meeting, or you can have a non-public meeting. But after the negotiations are over, the contract is either turned down or not, you should unseal those minutes. The public has a right to know that stuff. So, but it's after the fact. Let's say you were gonna buy a new piece of land for building an addition to the school or a high school. You decide you want your own high school. That is perfectly legal to have in non-public, the discussions, because you don't want to tell everybody in town, what you're looking at, so they raise their prices and everything else because the school wants it. But after it's said and done, then it should be unsealed. So I had mentioned at the last board meeting, and I just want to tell you this little story, about one gentleman who spoke when the board felt that he should. This happened to be a board of selectmen. So the board of selectmen were negotiating for a piece of land. A year later, one of the selectmen said something about the negotiations. The board already wanted to get rid of him, so this gave him the impetus to try to remove him. In the court, the judge said in his ruling, well, you were supposed to go back and unseal those minutes after the issue was over and done with, so he could keep his job, and he did. There's all kinds of sides to these things, and I've been on the board years, and I know, I brought this up at the select board meeting recently. One guy's been 15 years on the board, they've never unsealed minutes. Should. So, but anyway.
So they don't automatically unseal
No,
the 72 hours?
they do not. You're supposed to go through it once a year or something.
Non-public minutes automatically become public after 72 hours if they're not sealed.
Okay, that's what I was.
That's it.
You
If
don't
you
have-
don't seal them in 72 hours, they're automatically public.
For personnel and student issues.
Yeah, they have to be released to the public.
And they have to be sealed within 72 hours.
Correct.
Or you can't go back, a week later and say, oh, we should have.
Dave?
Okay, my issue would be if let's start with, the minutes weren't sealed. It was non-public, but the minutes weren't sealed. And I think ethically, if we talked about Jane Doe, that's not reflected in the minutes, it's just that we talked about a person. Correct. So if the minutes aren't sealed, and somebody feels comfortable to say, well, I personally said this about Jane Doe, and I think blank, blank, blank. Am I now outside my insurance carrier? If you're with the school board and there's something goes on where we have something. But if I'm outside and I've said something about non-public minutes, first, I don't think we should discuss anything in non. If we had a non-public and we said it's a person, we shouldn't be allowed to talk about it later. But that's just me.
But that's
what I'm
ethical,
saying is-
not legal. And that's where we're having the problem. The difference between ethical and legal. Everybody in
Right,
the
so
court
legally,
knows
that's
that
my
we-
question then. You feel ethically you can say what you want because you don't care what
I
you've said
didn't
about
say
so-and-so.
what I felt. I just said there are people that are gonna feel, like, okay, perfect example, last year's teachers' negotiations. All those negotiations happened in non-public,
Yeah.
okay? I've been talking about those to people all over town for months. I have no problem talking about last year's teachers' negotiations.
All right, okay.
And that's me.
Okay, now, if you were negotiating with the teachers, and it has in the past, I don't know if they're still doing it, we would sign a paper with the teachers saying we will not discuss negotiations until they're finalized and they're voted by the town.
Well, yeah, it was-
So if you
it's been well
go to
after
the
that.
meeting and you come out and you're telling everybody what you just discussed,
No, that's not, no,
Okay,
no, since, after.
Afterwards,
after it was
yes,
all
that's
done,
fine.
After it was all said and
That's
done.
fine.
But those are still non-public things.
Right.
And that's, to blanket statement something and say anything we talk about in non-public should never be uttered again is, there's room there. There's no reason that people shouldn't, in my opinion, okay, based on my ethics and my moral, there's no reason that people shouldn't know, especially people that are being affected by it, what happened in last year's teachers' negotiations.
right, yeah, and.
But it's the same, whether it's last year's or last month's, it's the same
Right,
principle.
afterwards, Tim had said that,
Yeah.
if we had the thing, we started voting on it, then everything is open, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, you come out of the negotiations, and you signed a paper saying you won't discuss them, and I don't mean
Well,
you
that's-
personally, but,
yeah.
so you start telling everybody, we're discussing this, and this is what we offered them. Now, are you stepping outside
that's
the
out-
school board and your protection?
That's outside of
Okay.
the rules,
All right.
what you
Absolutely.
just said.
Several rules that,
Right,
But
the rules of
legally,
the
we
teachers-
can't do anything to you.
No, legally you
But
can't,
then
but
you can
that's
be up for a
different.
civil suit, and I'm wondering, are you outside your protection as a
I
school
don't,
board
I
member?
don't think anybody has an issue with sealed, non-public minutes not being talked about. I think everybody's okay with that. The only gray area in this whole thing is if non-public minutes become public because they haven't been sealed, or they have been unsealed, and someone looks at them and says, oh, you were talking about personnel issues last month. What personnel issues were you talking about? Okay, well, that's one way you can say, I would say I was talking about so-and-so. I don't think we need her. I wouldn't have a problem with that, but I understand that, but it's legal. It's legal to do that based on the law.
Right, but if that person hears that from you, or from somebody else that heard you say that, you are opening up for yourself for a civil, in my opinion, a civil suit.
I can't be
My-
sued over my opinion about something, or
Oh,
what I
well,
did do.
yes, you can. Now, you may win because
Well,
it's your opinion, but you will be
sure.
sued for your opinion. I'm saying, my
That's
question
a
was,
valid point.
my question is, are you now protected by the school board? Because you also, we don't need this discussion.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it's, well,
I just want us to realize that. I know people.
but I can certainly speak for
But
myself.
who covers
Anybody
his
can
lawyer
speak for
fees?
themselves.
If you sue him, who's covering his fees?
I don't
Okay.
care, I don't care who's protecting out there. I
Yeah.
represent
All right,
myself.
we don't need this
Because he
discussion.
said his opinion didn't apply, he didn't
Right.
say the Northwood School.
Right.
No, the only issue here is how do we go forward? Because we have no either we make it a habit to seal non-public minutes, or we just go status quo and chips fall where they may. If we wanna protect ourselves, if we feel like we need protecting, we just need to make it a habit to seal non-public minutes.
That's what we always did. and
That's
then
our
we
only
kinda got
option.
out of it. Yeah, all right.
I mean, when everything is said and done, that's the only option that solves the problem.
Okay.
All right, we
Good,
don't need
thank
to
you
do
for
that.
all the information. I think this is something for each board probably, when we go back to next week.
Yeah.
I mean, this board, we can also do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something to think about, and, there's legal, there's moral, there's right and there's wrong. From my standpoint, I would appreciate help from all of you when we're done a meeting, a non-public meeting. Ask me the question, should we seal these minutes? I would really, and recently, on our board, we had a meeting, and I was thinking about all of this, driving around, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, and if there was ever a meeting that should be sealed, that was it. And I'm driving around Northwood thinking, oh my goodness. And I got on the phone to Scott, and we made an emergency meeting before the 72 hours, and we sealed those suckers. So,
Good for you.
it just, all of a sudden, zoom, and I get, and I want to seal the right minutes. If it's personnel, if it's, they should be sealed. And so we, like I say, it just, so, if somebody had said, hey, Scott, do we need to seal those minutes, we would have done it. And instead, he and I and Dave had to show up extra on one morning to fix our
paid
little food pump. We got paid overtime, right? Yeah. All right, is there any more on that? I think you all can see the,
Maybe we should join the local community.
Really?
the other thing, I had sent out 3 separate little sections via Pat. The back one, or I don't remember what order, but one of them is the complete 91A law. I really wish you guys would spend a few minutes and go through, because we only see the couple little things that we see. But there's a lot in this law that you don't normally see. So it would be nice if you just went through the whole thing and studied a little bit. Any more on that issue? Okay, I want to backtrack. In the minutes, we were talking about the evaluation plan. Tina, as you know, no longer is on the board, and she was the liaison to the evaluation plan. So we need a joint board representative to the evaluation, liaison to the evaluation.
I was on the evaluation. No, I was
Well,
on a
at some
different
point,
evaluation.
you weren't here
No,
for a
but this
whole
was in March,
year.
I know that.
All right.
Where
In
were you?
March, in March,
She
and
took a vacation.
Well, I can,
We nominated you to be on it.
Okay,
no, or
Dave.
maybe there's a different evaluation.
I'll nominate
Is there
Debbie to be on the committee.
Yes, there you go, there you go. Somebody second that?
I did.
Second over there.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I thought
Any
I was-
discussion?
I
No
thought I was
discussion.
on
All those in
evaluation.
favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
There.
I thought I was on
But
evaluation.
you are.
You are.
You were before too, Debbie.
I was?
Yeah.
So I've been on it all along.
You are.
There you
There you
go.
go.
So we took care of that, my little note in the minutes. Thank you, Debbie, we appreciate your help. Where are we? Sorry.
Okay, so don't.
Superintendent's still going.
Yeah,
I hope so.
just a couple quick updates. The health insurance update, we have all the information in school care. We called them again, and they're hoping that they can get us some numbers by early September. So as soon as we get those, we'll get those out to each of the boards. Again, it's just comparing school care to health trust that we're utilizing now, so you can get apples to apples and make some decisions there. As far as the food service is going, they're waiting for our profit loss statement to make sure that they can give us more accurate numbers. So again, I'm hoping that early September we can get something back from them as well.
Who did they choose for their food service?
We have,
Oh,
We
you didn't
haven't.
choose yours yet?
No,
Oh, I
we're
thought
getting,
you put it
no,
in
we're still getting numbers back.
Oh, you
Start weekend.
yeah.
So hopefully we can get
We
that.
probably wouldn't be even gonna start either next year or
Were
even
you down
January
to the
1st or
two?
something.
Were you down to 2?
Yeah, but more,
We haven't had a discussion.
pretty much.
Well, yeah.
Which one was it, Abby? You're looking at Abby?
Abby was one of them.
Yes, so those will be
We're not
back,
very-
hopefully early September.
Cooper Hill. Cooper Hill.
There you go.
I do that.
That's all I have.
Sue's gonna give us a management committee update, right, Sue?
Okay, so the management committee met on July 25th. I think we discussed that at the last meeting. Apologize for not being here. And then we regrouped on August 15th. And so essentially what we've been taking up in discussion is the NESDEC study. The choice points, I believe, were handed out to this board on the,
Right.
okay. So essentially what the management committee would like to recommend is that each of the boards take back to their individual boards these choice points, and particularly, I think curriculum was one of them, and discuss how you wish to proceed, because one of the things that the NESDEC report indicated was that each individual board needs to decide independently how they want to proceed, what their thoughts are, and then come back to the joint level and we'll discuss it. So in order for us to move forward, that's something that we should be doing. The other thing that we discussed was the need for goals, what have you. As we just heard, we're policy driven. We should be developing goals and in collaboration with the administration as total district leadership. and work on those goals, and that's where we put our resources, and it will help us at budget time, knowing what we wanna work toward, what we're putting money toward. And the other idea that came up, and we don't know if it's feasible or not, but it was just something that was put out there. We've all had a lot of legal opinions lately. Some of them are very generic and could be shared amongst everybody, others are specific and private. We think that it might be a good idea to have these legal opinions indexed and put, like, a card catalog, like almost a library, so that when someone comes back and they have a question on a particular topic, they can say, Nottingham had that, it's a generic topic, it can be shared, instead of going back out and reinventing the wheel and taking the time to redo it.
Good idea.
Which I think we discussed would be maintained at the SAU.
Yes, at the
Yes,
SAU, right. And there would be a distinction between
It's not a
those
good plan.
legal items that are.
He goes, Scott agreed, and I said, no, I'm talking about it.
No, it was left out, obviously.
No, we've decided we can do it,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Get that bus out.
Do it behind your back. Don't go on
No,
vacation.
I went to him as soon
You
as
don't want
I
to
got
do
back.
that. Don't go on
I was
vacation.
just, he told us he goes to, we were just checking.
We never talked about
Washington, Florida, the high school play.
right, so that really was it. It's the joint board meeting goals and objectives, and need to be discussing goals and setting those up, and then working policy. And I think our policy, we've noted that we could be elaborating on some policies as well. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Are you giving us, I think we'd do better with timelines. So if you would say you'd like the boards to have this discussed by,
Well, we said, we
September
thought it would be the next meeting.
Okay.
Our next meeting at the joint level, if people can come back prepared to at least discuss choice point, the third one. I guess really, all of them, if you have a conversation about it and come back prepared to talk about how we wish to proceed. We talked about IT functions, grant writer, curriculum, so. And again, how we're measuring these things and what goals we really have and we want to establish. Maybe we should be talking about having, a work session where we have someone come in and help us work through goals and just make short work of it and get it done. That's everything, I believe.
Anything else? Anybody want to discuss anything with the management committee?
Nope.
Right?
Dave's got new business though.
Dave?
New or old business, that was just a question.
He's got business.
Business, like a monkey business.
I have a correctional institute here for you, the New Hampshire Concord
Still
Prison
make, they make
thing.
good furniture,
Yeah.
you get the pictures in there. I have two questions for Nottingham and Strafford. Question one, part A, what percentage of foreign exchange students do you pay for tuition at Co-Brown or Dover? And part B, do you put that in your budget, like do you prepare for that in advance? In other words, budget season's coming up, would you put in 200 going to Co-Brown, one foreign exchange, and put it in your budget?
we've had foreign exchange students, but we don't budget for it, that I know of, that I can recall.
What percentage do you
It's not a separate.
No.
It's not a line, it's not a line.
I can remember, the last one that I can remember having was, I don't know if either of you were on the board, it was probably 4.5, 5 years ago, and I think they paid very little, they may have paid a couple of thousand and we paid the rest. From what I remember, I don't know, Carol probably
They
could go
being
back.
the foreign exchange student?
I think the parents of the foreign exchange student.
Okay, so
yeah.
Co-Brown didn't pick up any of it? I know we're asking you to go back 4 or 5 years.
Carol would have
Co-Brown
it.
does, I think, pick up.
They pay
Yeah,
half.
they pay
Some,
half.
Yeah.
All right. And then, all right, I just wondered what goes on. And then, my question is about treasurers and signing our payrolls. In other words, we sign for payroll so that our employees can be paid. If it's in between a meeting, how do you sign the payroll? What do you do? Both towns? In other words, your treasurer has got to sign the checks.
I think they go to the SAU office.
We've only been getting the manifest at the meetings, right?
Correct.
The payroll
Correct.
manifest at the.
So there's got to be a payroll in
There-
between.
there
So
is.
they're paying them before the manifests are signed, or?
Correct. That's how the other two schools are set up. It's going to, we get the manifest. So I believe Nottingham, for instance, was, you had a payroll last week. And it actually probably should have been in there because you're on the same week. So manifest probably made it in there with your meeting. But if it's an off week of the payroll in your board meeting, then it will be with your accounts payable manifest in there.
So your treasurer doesn't say, I ain't signing the checks until some school board members sign the payroll.
No, and that's probably where you have to get into procedure and look at some of your policies if that's what you wish. We don't really, I think we'd be better off meeting with our treasurer and getting a few reports here and there.
I just
Sorry,
wonder
I'm
what
not
other
laughing
towns
at
do.
you. I'm not laughing at you,
Wouldn't be
it's something
unusual.
between us. No, I'm never gonna say that.
But I'm just wondering what other towns do, because we have a problem.
Dave knows that our treasurer,
No, we
if
have
the
a
manifest isn't
problem.
signed, would not sign the
We
check.
have an issue.
Oh, is it an issue? We have an issue.
Well, you got a
Oh, I
procedure,
have
and
an
you're
issue.
following a procedure, so.
We have a procedural issue.
It's not a big problem, Dave and I have to go up and sign the checks, that's all.
You're authorized to
I'm
send
very
somebody.
close, so it don't bother me.
I just wonder what other towns do.
Okay.
Ken, what was that? What was the
I want to
Reader's,
hear it here.
I'm sorry.
the Reader's Digest version of,
Point till-
that plan you were trying to get towns to all combine their boards with some money to bring together the training?
The Reader's Digest version is, so that's gonna come out here in the next week, 10 days, I think. I would like to see in my town, because we're having some issues, not on my school board, so please don't anybody get all in a tizzy here, but we are having some issues on some of our boards.
I get a tizzy all the time.
And so I've suggested that we have someone come in and do a talk on what it means to be a chair and what it means to be a board member. And I'm gonna go to the 3 different town administrators and the 3 different town chairs and ask them all to chip in $80. And then figure out, and I'm thinking in October, figuring out where it would be centralized, which would probably be Northwood, and we could do it in Northwood, but if someone else wants to do it, that's fine with me too. And just have a meeting. If that happens, then